The Common Africa position, based on the Ezulwini Consensus agreed by the African Union in 2005, seeks 2 permanent seats with veto rights and 5 additional non-permanent seats on the Council. But intergovernmental negotiations have not made substantial progress in advancing the issue since 2009. President Bio also chairs the African Union's Committee of 10, tasked with mobilizing around the matter.
Africa wants the veto abolished. However, if UN member states wish to retain the veto, it must extend it to all new permanent members as a matter of justice. The Common African position is premised on the fact that by rectifying historical injustice, the international community will not only promote greater fairness, equity, and equality in global governance, but also act on the imperative to ensure the legitimacy and effectiveness of the Council.
He went further, arguing that given the historical injustices of Africa's exclusion in key decision-making bodies and institutions, that the continent should now be treated as a special case for redress.
Africa has long been marginalized in global decision-making processes, and its voice are often drowned out. This results in a lack of meaningful representation on issues that directly affect the continent, such as conflict prevention, peacekeeping operations, conflict resolution, and sustainable development. This systemic bias perpetrates a cycle of marginalization and reinforces the false notion of Africa as a passive actor in shaping global affairs.
So that African voices are heard.
This was a view echoed by the Secretary-General, who remains on the sidelines of a member state-driven intergovernmental process on UN reform.
In 1945, most of today's African countries were still under colonial rule and had no voice in international affairs. This created a glaring omission that has remained unresolved until now. There is no permanent member representing Africa in the Security Council, and the number of elected members from the continent is not in proportion to its importance. We cannot accept that the world's preeminent peace and security body lacks a permanent voice for a continent of well over 1 billion people.
This South African academic in international relations argued that Africa's special claim to be prioritized was based on historical injustices, its contribution in shaping the contemporary world order, and the urgency in securing the future legitimacy of the organization writ large.
I beg your indulgence as we time travel to 2045 to a meeting in this chamber commemorating the 100th anniversary of the UN. At that point, Africa will have 2.3 billion people, making up 25% of the global population. Young Africans, as the most fit and able global demographic, will be the world's workforce and consumer base, keeping the global economy in business. Will the membership of the UN Security Council still look like it does today? Or will the diplomats seated here have had the courage to tackle head-on the power relations preventing meaningful reform?
It's the Security Council that today sought to highlight the issue. It's the General Assembly where the reforms must be agreed and adopted. The Africa position is, of course, not the only game in town. The G4 grouping of Brazil, Germany, India and Japan seek the same status as the current permanent 5, but have shown some flexibility on being extended the veto. Another bloc called Uniting for Consensus includes countries like Italy, Argentina, Mexico, Pakistan and Turkey that advocate for expanding the Council's elected membership, but not the permanent category at all, arguing it would only reinforce the great power hierarchy. And to further complicate matters, at least 2/3 of UN membership must agree to any changes that must include the acquiescence of the permanent 5 members, who each hold veto power over any changes, whether there's broad consensus or not. Shervin Bryce, please, SABC News, New York.